I've been practicing that gavel thing for a while now. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Monday, November 25th, 2024 regular meeting of the Monroe Local Schools Board of Agenda. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Carpenter?
Present.
Mrs. Hagedorn? Present. Mr. Grant?
Here.
Mr. Leeds?
Here.
Mr. Fulham?
Here.
Would everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. May I get a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn? Aye. Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Section 2, Board Liaison and Committee Updates. Item 2.1, Legislative.
Get ready. They're back to work. Well, not working, but they're back in Columbus. There is a change in speakers in Columbus. Stevens, at the 23rd hour, decided he's not going to run for office. So it looks like Matt Huffman will probably be speaker. And if he is, we may have some situations where our tax money is less than what we thought it would be, because I talked to Thomas Hall the other day and asked him if his bill that he put in back in January of last year, if that's still in. And he said yes, and he said the goal is to get that passed and get it signed into law. So that will cut taxes on the elderly and some of the poor people. So it depends on how that goes, see what it does to us. Also found out in Columbus at the OSBA meeting that the state budget coming out next year, there is little or no increase in funding for the public schools in Ohio. They don't expect any. Legislative, Senate activity. This was in Robert's weekly report. This is a Senate Bill 104. Originally addressed the Ohio College Credit Plus system, but in the final hours before the General Assembly's summer recess, the House added the Protect All Students Act regarding single-sex bathroom access in schools and institutions of higher education to the bill. With this vote of Senate approval, Senate Bill 104 will be sent to the governor's desk for signature. In the House Primary and Secondary Education Committee, there are several things that they have done. The committee heard sponsored testimony on House Bill 411. This bill would increase the base teacher salary to $50,000. And on Wednesday, the committee held an informal hearing on chronic absenteeism with testimony from various people, including Kelly Duddleson, the attendance officer of Monroe Local Schools, but I think that is up in Madison County. I'm not sure. I think that's where that's at. But they're going to put some kind of legislation in about how to control absenteeism or how to report it in a better way. The committee also heard testimony on House Bill 470. This bill would require the Department of Education and Workforce to conduct audits on the cost of state assessments in public, charter, STEM, and chartered non-public schools. That could be good for us. The Senate Education Committee held its first hearing on House Bill 178. This bill would prohibit public schools and public preschools when discriminating against a student because of traits associated with a student's race, including hair texture and protective hairstyles such as braids, locks, and twists. The bill also allows an individual alleging a school has discriminated against a student based on traits associated with the student's race to sue in any court having jurisdiction. House Transportation Committee. They looked at the substitute version of House Bill 279, and the bill would appropriate $25 million to create a school bus safety grant fund at the Department of Education and Workforce to assist districts with the cost of installing safety features on new and existing school buses. The bill will also increase the penalties of illegally passing a stopped school bus and designated August as the School Bus Safety Month. The next item that they brought up, and the reason we have so many items is this is a lame duck session because some of these guys didn't get reelected, and so they want to get their stuff passed before they hit the road. The House Commerce and Labor Committee. The committee heard sponsor testimony to House Bill 558. The bill would require any food service operation to denote on its menu or menu board the food items that contain milk, eggs, fish, crustacean shellfish, tree nuts, peanuts, wheat, or soybeans. The Senate Finance Committee, the committee heard sponsor testimony to Senate Bill 190. This bill would reduce the sports gaming tax rate from 20 to 10%. And then the Senate Ways and Means Committee, the committee held its first hearing on Senate Bill 308. The bill would require emergency and substitute tax levies to be included in the calculation of a school district's 20 mil floor for property tax purposes and prohibits a school district from shifting the purpose of its unvoted property tax millage in a way that would increase the district's tax revenue. That's a big one. The committee also heard and sponsored testimony on House Bill 496, and this bill would revise the law governing property taxes and county auditors. I don't know how you do anything with county auditors, but that's in there. So I wanted to look at the bill, but I didn't get a chance to.
Yeah, as Tom said, it's lame duck session. I've heard anywhere that a lot could get done or nothing. Because
Exactly.
I do believe Huffman and Stevenson do not like each other
No.
at all, so that could be interesting. A Wild West up there in Columbus right now.
Yep, that's it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Item 2.2, Butler Tech. President Guido.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam President, members of the board. I appreciate you having me tonight. I have been busy, if you guys can tell. We have had 4 ribbon cuttings since I've seen you last. We had a ribbon cutting for the aviation program at Hook Field, advanced manufacturing in Hamilton, the Bioscience Center in Westchester off I-75, and we opened a new precision manufacturing program at D. Russell Lee. So all the approvals are in, the cranes are out there. You can actually see the crane off I-75, so they are pushing dirt. Looks like a muddy swimming pool right now, but excited to get that finally in motion and provide some more space for the students that I've been talking about for the last several years. So very exciting for that. I want to give a shout out to the staff here. We had career days for our, what are they, sophomores and freshmen, and they specifically talked about the Monroe students and how well behaved they were. So whoever needs to get that message, please pass that along. You know, thousands of kids across the county were at this school, and to have our school district called out specifically, it did make me feel proud. I also want to give another shout out to the mock interviews that you helped participate in that was held here. They rave about that, and so that is another very good program that's offering real-life experience for kids, so they can use that when they go out into the workforce or, you know, are up for a scholarship or anything that they're going to be doing. I am actually leaving December 4th through the 7th to San Antonio to the National ECTE Conference, and I'm presenting there. We have a session. It's a mega session that's open to probably about 500. They expect about 500 people to attend that. I'm not presenting alone, so but so it's pretty exciting to do that. So I'm definitely excited about that. Last but not least, I want to congratulate you guys for passing your levy. We've had a lot of construction going on at Butler Tech over the years, and I can say that the building out here is a testament to that, and it was so exciting to watch that thing go up and then have the day when we walked in there and cut the ribbon and exciting. But it's more exciting if you go in there today and see all the animals, smell it, and see what's going on over there. It's really exciting. So I'm excited for what you guys are about to embark on, and, you know, kudos to everybody who stuck with it. And, you know, we've known that we've needed that school for a long time, so excited to see what happens here at Monroe with that new building. Any questions?
What about your leader?
Yes, I forgot. The last one, the big one. As you can tell, I'm real excited to talk about that. Received a resignation from our superintendent, John Graft. He's been here for 9 years. I get it. We did retaining on for a 2-year cycle. We have so many construction projects going on. He's going to manage the construction for the next 2 years and also stay on as a strategic advisor to help mentor a new superintendent and get them up and running with that. We are going to look internally first. So our December 17th board meeting, we are going to executive session to look at the initial candidates that we had internally. I personally am hopeful that we can keep this internal, but you know, it's up to the will of the board, and it'll be a good fight on our hand if either way, to be honest with you. So we've had tons of success out there, and definitely want to do what's best for students and for the district at whole. So if we do go external, I would expect it will involve some sort of a committee, and I would hope that either Robert or somebody, if you need another meeting to attend, but maybe you guys. I don't know what that search will look like, but it's a pretty very important ad, as you can imagine. I mean, Robert, you've changed the trajectory of this district, so we appreciate that. So more to come on that. I hope the first interviews should be in January, and we could have an answer as soon as February. So we'll see what happens with it.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Guido.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And thanks for the magazines, Amy.
It's quite a collection.
All right. Item 2.3, student achievement. Mrs.
Hi.
Hagedorn.
Yes. Good evening. So for student achievement, I'd like to, as Mr. Guido had mentioned, thank Mrs. Turvey for the mock interviews in the college and career readiness class that students were interviewed by volunteers, where they learned interview etiquette, how to dress, prepare for questions, and just prepare for the future. So that was a great experience for those students. There were also 80 students that registered to donate blood. 60 were successful, and 46 students were first-time donors. There were over 180 lives were positively impacted because of the donations. 27 students were inducted into the National Honor Society, and I'd like to congratulate the high school choir and the new female vocalist choir, who put on a great performance, and thanks to Mr. Longier for organizing and creating the new female vocalist choir. There were also several career field trips for the high school. There was a MedQuest trip to the Atrium Medical Center, where students were given the opportunity to experience different careers within the hospital. They went to sessions on different departments and learned about surgical, respiratory therapy, occupational therapy, cardiac sonography, and CT scanning. The students also were given the opportunity to speak with a surgeon, human resources, and a representative from Complement as well as other people within the hospital. One of the most interesting things they did was suture a piece of chicken. They were given surgical instruments such as gloves and other items, and they were shown how to, and then actually perform surgery on a piece of chicken. How fun is that? Another trip was they went to Siebold Metro Park field trip, where students were given the opportunity to go to the park and complete service learning experience. During the trip, the students engaged in the shelter and park bench painting and litter cleanup activities, so fostering a sense of community service, environmental stewardship. They learned about career opportunities within the Butler County Metro Parks and spent time outside serving the local community. And the last field trip was the Health Force Careers events, where students were given the opportunity to attend the Health Force Careers event at the Sharonville Convention Center. At this event, over 40 greater Cincinnati area health systems, community-based organizations, and technical colleges and universities exhibited a wide variety of healthcare career possibilities. Students were able to learn more about the wide variety of post-secondary professions within the healthcare system, and met with professionals and listened to a panel of medical professionals during the event. So I'd like to thank Ms. LaForest, Mrs. Clemens, and Mrs. Thornton for organizing these field trips, and what a great opportunity for the students. And then for the junior high, I'd like to kind of go back a month or two. Back in September, 35 students were inducted into the National Junior Honor Society. I'm not sure if I mentioned it back then, but just kind of wanted to re-mention that. And then 7th grade student of the month was Nolan Likens. Mrs. Boggs states that Nolan exemplifies our building pillars of better together, stand up and own it, and relentless effort. He consistently pushes himself to grow and exceed his limits. He sets a great example for his peers, both behaviorally and academically. Nolan can work well with anyone. I can depend on Nolan to handle any situation with poise and maturity. I appreciate that Nolan speaks up in class and often leads class discussions. Nolan is responsible and stands out as a leader in our building. He is extremely deserving of this award. So congratulations to Nolan. In 8th grade, the student of the month was Jack Nienberg. Mrs. Decker states, I'm happy to nominate Jack for student of the month. Jack comes to class every day with a positive attitude and is consistently engaged in class activities and discussions. Jack strives to do his best and doesn't back down from a challenge. Jack is also a positive peer role model. He follows directions quickly and efficiently. He is always on task and goes above and beyond what is required. Jack represents the values of our school's 3 pillars of better together, relentless effort, and standing up and owning it. So congratulations to Jack. As for the primary, I'd like to congratulate Margaret Downey, Kennedy Ellington, Harper Maynard, Amelia McAllister for being selected as winners for the Monroe Fire Department Coloring Contest. They were presented with a certificate in front of their peers and invited to a pizza party at the firehouse. I think that'd be fun for the primary students. I'd also like to give it a shout out to Mr. Nolan Miller, the physical ed teacher at Monroe Junior High and the strength and conditioning football coach for the high school. Mr. Miller was selected as the Channel 12 Teacher of the Week. I'd like to thank Mr. Stanger for nominating Mr. Miller for this honor, and also thank Adam Markham for nominations to the news channels and other media outlets to show others that Monroe Local Schools is truly a great district. And that's all I have for them.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. All right, Section 3, Communications, Item 3.1, Athletic Recognitions.
This time I asked Mr. Silverman to come up. We have a couple of recognitions from our fall athletics.
Thank you, and I want to thank the board for the opportunity to recognize these athletes this evening. We had a really, really successful fall season, and we have a couple of the successes we'd like to highlight this evening. And the first is Carson Leach. Carson qualified for the OHSAA Regional Cross Country Meet back in October up at Troy. If you've never been up there, it's a really cool venue. It's right there by the Memorial Stadium, right on the river and the levee. So it's really cool. And I'll invite Coach Wilcox up to talk about Carson here in a second. But what was really cool was last spring, we're at the state track meet, and Carson was just talking a little bit about what his goals were and aspirations for this upcoming season, both in track and cross country. And to see the amount of work that he's put in and the dedication that he's put in to really get to the next level and have to compete with the best of the best in the state was really awesome to watch him, to be able to be there at the district meet and see him qualify for the regional meet and really represented us so well up in Troy. So with that, I want to invite Coach Jamie Wilcox, our head cross country coach, up to talk about Carson Leach.
Thanks for having me back. I'm very excited to be here to recognize Carson for his success this season. I don't know, many of you knew he ran cross country as a freshman, decided to step away from the school aspect of running for a bit, but he never left it behind. He was just going back to find his passion. And if you go through his mile split profile, you can find some other races he's done, some 3K, some miles, some things. But I knew the day that he walked away his freshman year, he would be back. There's something about running for your school, and there's something about being out here to compete and having the opportunity to run at Troy and go to the district meet and prove to yourself that you can do what you've known all along. So when he left, I knew he'd be back. I just didn't know when. So I heard rumors last year during cross, oh, Carson's coming back for track. He's coming back for track. And sure enough, on day one, he showed up. And since then, he's really taken a really solid leadership role in the team. He's got a quiet confidence about him. The team really bonds around Carson and trusts him. We started a new thing a couple of years ago where students comment on their peers as they're graduating for seniors, and just a couple of the things about Carson, and it all speaks to his character and his leadership. When we warmed up together near one of the last practices, that talk was very meaningful, sharing so many cool downs, talking with him and listening to Master of Puppets. Let's see, go to the next page here. Let's see. Carson can run the race of his life and still lead us through all of the positive times that we're looking for. And just one more where somebody says, for the first time I spoke with him was before my very first race. He helped me calm down, helped me motivate myself to be better than I was the day before. And those are just things that have led Carson to the success he's found in the last season specifically. He did really well in track. We're looking forward to the next track season. I will say the first time I ever saw him run was the 6th grade state meet at Dublin Jerome. I'd never had seen Carson before running, but the intensity and the motivation and the drive he had as a 12-year-old was crazy. Fast forward 6 years, and the maturity and the discipline and the work ethic he's put in to get where he is have given him a whole new perspective. It has been truly fun to watch. The first meet of the season, we ran at VOA. It's a good test to see how that course runs. He was in the mid-17s. He was disappointed. He could have walked away. He could have said, this isn't for me, and that was not what I was expecting. He said, nope, I've got this. I know I have it in me. He worked this season. He went to Firebird. They went to compete that day, and I know he still wanted better. He still had it in him. If you're familiar with how the postseason works, you have to run in the top 20 or 24, depending on which race you're in, to advance to regionals. It doesn't matter what your time is. You have to be in that top. Well, we all knew it was going to run sub 16:30 or close to it, and Carson's PR at the time was still in the 17s. So I don't know if he really believed it was going to happen, but I had a feeling it was going to be a great race. He took the nerves, he channeled them, and he came in at 16:24, which was more than a minute faster than the first time we ran that course this season, and 40 seconds faster than the prior week at Eaton. So it's a tough course with tough competition. You have to get out, you have to go. And Carson found it when it mattered. It was like lightning struck. If a dream is from your heart and a goal is from your mind, Carson was in harmony that day, and it was an awesome thing to watch. So to leave him with this, I'm excited for track, but the best days that Carson has are ahead of him, and he's going to use what he took from this and make himself even better and continue to surprise himself along the way. So congratulations.
Do you want to do a picture before or after? Or
Let's do
do
after.
you want? I got it. Cool.
Yep, we'll sub them in.
Cool. Thanks. Next, I'd like to introduce our head boys soccer coach, Billy Ganaste, to come up and talk about our SWBL co-champions, the boys soccer team. This is a really fun group of guys to watch play soccer. And what was really cool, and we were actually having a conversation today about, is, watching this program continue to not miss a beat. The standards that these guys meet and that they rise to, the coaches set them high for them. They set them high in the classroom. They set high for expectations for how they behave in the community. They set them high for on the soccer field. And they meet every single one of them and exceed those. They're a great group of young guys that academically are, off the charts when we go through and we check our GPAs for the quarter and see where our teams are at. They're always right at the top. We never have any behavior issues, from our boys soccer program, and the discipline that they show in those other aspects of their life carries out onto the soccer field. And they had their ups and downs throughout the season, but they just kept chipping away and fighting and battling and really put together a great season and played really tough competition along the way and brought back some hardware to the trophy case. So, Coach, if you want to come up and talk a bit about the season.
First of all, thank you for honoring these boys and having us up here today. It's a special community. Straight from the board down to Mr. Silverman and Mr. Prohaska, and there's a whole support system here, and that's one of the greatest things that I think this organization has is everyone around that's supporting. And a huge thank you to the board, the school, the administration, the community. They provide meals for our boys before away games, and so having that support is something that I know a lot of coaches from other schools, and they don't necessarily have that. So I appreciate it, and I know the boys do as well. They had a great year. Success can be defined in a lot of different ways. You look at our record, 9-6-1. Yeah, it's okay. Winning the SWBL as co-champions was one of our goals. We had a lot of other goals on the board as well. Some we hit, some we didn't. After the loss to Northwest in the second round of the tournament, it leaves an edge for next year. So that's one of the things for the returners that we're looking forward to, is kind of starting next season with a little chip on our shoulder. It's a little unfinished business. But I couldn't be more proud of these guys. We had a SWBL Player of the Year in Braden Buckner. We had 4 first-team SWBL players, 2 second-team SWBL, and an honorable mention. The 4 first-teamers were also all selected to All-Southwest Ohio. And just, the guys themselves and the work that they put in every day, not only on the field, but in the classroom, as Mr. Silverman attributed to. We hold these guys in high regards for their classroom performance. We blast it out. If you're on Twitter, you'll always see each quarter, because that's one thing that we feel really drives our group to be different and a little bit, more successful on our side than others. We try to hold that standard. For Q1, 3.72 GPA, 13 players across JV and varsity with 4.0s. So, that is stuff, when we talk about success, it's not always just between the sticks. It's, it's in the classroom too. We're students first and then athletes second. But yeah, I couldn't be more proud of these guys. Next year, returning 11 to 13 seniors, juniors that will be seniors. One of the biggest soccer classes, I think, in history. 2021 may be close. So a lot of talent coming back, some young talent that will look to emerge. you know, and we'll keep doing our thing. Hopefully we'll have our third SWBL title in 4 years next year, and we'll be sitting up here talking about.
Outright.
Yeah, outright. I don't like sharing. So, you want me to?
You can introduce the guys.
Yeah. So sophomore, Nick No. You gotta come up here.
Yeah.
Or stand up,
Come on over.
Oh, no,
Yeah, come out here, because you're behind
Come
the,
on over.
yeah, come over here.
That's it. Just Nick by himself.
Let's do senior defender, Evan Agee. Yeah. Let's see. Junior defender, Zeke Cruz. His hair's sticking out the side. Junior midfielder, Omar Al-Badawi. Junior midfielder, first team All-District, first team All-SWBL, Caden Granaste. Junior striker, Bryce Reynolds. Junior goalkeeper, Joe Tarrin. Joe is also one of our National Honor Society members. Senior honorable mention, SWBL, Landon Horman. Senior striker, SWBL Player of the Year, SWBL First Team All Southwest District, Braden Buckner. And I know Rock doesn't like pictures. He never shows up on picture day. But you know, that's the last piece that I want to, you know, issue a huge kudos to is the rest of our staff. You know, a lot of them couldn't be here tonight, but everybody has a role, and we couldn't do what we do without each and every one of them. And I know these guys look to them all for very different things, but as a whole, it's contributed to our success. So, congratulations.
Let's do one of each. Okay.
You gonna jump in too, right, Billy?
Last chance, Rock.
Little guys, I'll be in the back.
You may have to be in front of somebody.
Yeah, let's sit up front. There you go. Walk everybody in the back. That looks good.
Dave Grant, Mike,
Okay. Let's see. Can I have one of you step forward? There we go, perfect. Then you guys kind of split it. Perfect. Okay. 1, 2, 3. One more, everybody. 1, 2, 3. All right.
Good job, guys.
Thank you.
Great job, Carter.
You're welcome. Great job. We ordered a whole extra pizza. I know.
Don't fall for it. Don't fall for
Did you have something from Sure, why not? Perfect, okay. All right, 1, 2, 3. One more, 1, 2, 3. All right.
I love how Eric's sitting in the picture.
Thanks.
Sure.
Good job, buddy. See this
All right, moving along to item 3.2, comments from the public. Seeing none, we will move on to item 3.3, superintendent update. Mr. Buskirk.
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. I just want to start off again by saying it's a very exciting time for Monroe schools and the whole community. And I want to extend a huge thank you to the entire community for their support with the bond issue back there. It's almost been a month now. And then a special thank you, one of them just walked out the door, to some of the individuals that spent a huge amount of time working on the committee to get all the information out for the bond issue. And we are actually going to recognize them at the December board meeting, just as a special thank for the actual committee that did all that work. I did just want to share again, I know I shared in my update, but I want to talk again about our athletic training contract. If you remember last spring, we put it out to bid, and there is I'll make this quick. They changed the requirements to become an athletic trainer. It went from a 4-year degree to I believe it was a 6-year program. So there was a 2-year gap of no athletic trainers coming out of school, which created a very high shortage, especially in Ohio here. And so as we went through that, we really were pretty limited as we looked at the different companies. Basically, they said, do you have your own trainer? And if, we didn't, it kind of limited what we did. So we stuck with Premier. We have a current trainer in place, but about 2 weeks ago, I was notified that that trainer is transferring to a college, and Premier basically said, we don't have anybody to replace her, so good luck finding somebody. So we have, if you see later on our board agenda, we are terminating the contract with Premier. We've been meeting with, we reach out, extended to all the other companies, health providers. Kettering Hospital has been fantastic in reaching out and helping us. They're going to continue to try to at least put some things together to get us through this school year. They're working with Eric and looking for some things to get us through this school year. So there's a temporary agreement with Kettering on the board agenda later. And then we're going to regroup with them in January to look at the maybe a long-term contract and their ability to find a full-time trainer, hopefully starting this summer, but moving forward. So, but I'll bring, if we can come to an agreement with them, that'll come back to a future board meeting. So, there we go. So, facility-wise, I just wanted to remind you that the contract for Conger as the CM for the gym infill project is on this. We went through the bid process, or not the bid process, the RFP for that. We interviewed, narrowed it down, and we went with Conger. We actually, on Friday, had even though we haven't formally approved it, they wanted to get started, so we had our first meeting. I thought it was very successful, getting everybody on board, and so that went well. Then December 11th, we have our initial kickoff meeting with OFCC to get that process started with obviously the new high school project. I have 2 associates from MCS here tonight who has been working with us, and they have been a tremendous help through the whole pre-bond issue. But as we move forward, their role is going to greatly expand as owners reps. And again, their role moving forward is they don't work for the architect, they don't work for the construction company, they work with us. And they have been through, they know the intricacies of the OFCC building projects, building schools, and so they have been invaluable in the pre-bond, and they're going to continue to work with us. And Holly and Mike are here tonight. I don't know if either of you wanted to kind of share your role of what it's going to be moving forward.
All right. Good evening. We have been working diligently on the front end. A lot of the setup work is where we try to bring the most value, really, because setting up the right team and the right grouping. We just went through the procurement process for the gym infill project. Well, now that you guys are with the OFCC and getting funding, we have another procurement process to get through. So mapping that through, getting an architect, CMR on board again, working through those. And when me and Mike talked this morning, we were going through, there's a lot that you guys need to do in this process as well, especially Amy. She's got a lot to do in this process, but as you'll see, a couple things on her list already that are hitting as you guys are working through the bond process. But we want you focused on vision. We want you focused on the design. We want you to focus on the product that comes out of this. What we look to focus on, budget, schedule, and quality. It's the triangle of all construction projects that we need to be helping you guys through some of the OCC processes. You're going to have a younger project manager assigned to you from them, and trying to push through a little bit. And I said younger, but I was like, it's a newer one. So as we go through a lot of their policies and procedures, just making sure that what is best for the district through all of those things is what we're looking out for the whole time. We will have another couple guys out here for during the construction process as well. I'm very heavily involved in the upfront procurement, design, things to get our team and the design set up over the next year. As the construction develops, you'll probably see Mike more because he's always working on quality assurance. But we'll have guys on site at least once a week, going to all the pre-install meetings, going to all the progress meetings, meeting with the subcontractors, just getting all the details that come together and helping to bring and translate some of the construction stuff so we can give you updates on a regular basis.
As we sit through all these meetings with construction companies and architects, and they all know Mike and Holly and respect Mike and Holly, and they've been a huge asset for the pre-bond stuff, and I look forward to them being, I know it's somebody that Jesse and I both lean on a lot for questions, and they've been through, Mike used to work for OFCC, so he knows the ins and outs of it. He's a trader, and now he works for us, so. But they all know the ins and outs of the whole process, so they've been very helpful, and they'll continue to work with us through this whole process, so I appreciate it.
Thanks. Let us know if you have any questions at any time,
Yeah.
too.
I'd like to ask you a question. When I was at the OSBA in Columbus, I went to the OFCC booth and asked a question on the architect. Now, this was a young girl. She was the only one there.
Annalise was probably the one you talked to.
No, she was younger than her.
Oh, okay.
She said 3 to 5 months to get an architect.
So they do move a little bit slower than we do on the procurement process sometimes. So it shouldn't take 3 to 5 months to get the architect on board. And we'll try to help set up that timeline during our kickoff meeting of what we should expect. But you're usually looking at about they're usually putting 2 to 4 weeks out on the street. So they have to advertise for about 2 to 4 weeks out on the street. Then you get qualifications in. That's another few weeks. But I was like, we're probably looking at a 3-month timeline to get that on. The CMR is a little different. We actually have to be out on the street 30 days for just qualifications. Those, and you guys have just done this because you've got a contract on the list. But then after that, then we get a smaller group in the selection process, do the proposals that have the costing information in them. So, and then you're looking at another 6-week process to finalize the contract after that. So the CMR process is a little bit longer than the architect, but you are looking at probably 3 months for an architect and probably 4 months for the construction manager. So.
And I, just to add to that, which you couldn't keep me in my seat all night,
Nope.
could you? I had to get up and talk. No, and again, I say this jokingly, but we want to be able to help OFCC get through some of these processes as well. So I want to thank all of you, certainly those two on the end. It's been a pleasure working with everyone thus far, and we're really looking forward to taking off on a good adventure. It's a new school, and I think we'll have a lot of fun. I think that's the key. We want it to be fun for you. I think that's what we'll be able to do is, keep you involved, keep you informed. Big decisions, obviously, you're going to have to be involved, but there's a lot of work, in those three important lanes of a project, budget, schedule, quality of work. We want to do the work, but, we want you guys to be well-informed before you make any decisions. We want you to have all the information that you want, but we want to keep things moving. That's what we're really going to focus on is, again, you talk about procurement and the architect, there's ways to accelerate if we need to. We always want to be careful. We don't want to rush people. We may have to lean into them from time to time and give them a nudge, but ultimately we want people that are building the building, we want them to measure twice, cut once. I want the work done right the first time. By the end of the project, there's going to be a time for a punch list. We want to get all these issues addressed in a timely fashion. That's the goal. So I think taking off on this project, I think she mentioned I will be involved start to finish. Holly will too, as needed, but she's very heavy on the the pre-construction piece of it. Kyle Urick, who's been in the meetings, and everyone, he's met everyone and they're familiar with him. When we get into construction, he'll be more of boots on the ground. We like to think, 1 day a week. Sometimes that turns into 3 days a week. It depends on what's going on, what is needed. But that's really how we approach the projects. So I think she did a great job. I put her up here because I didn't want to run my mouth and keep everybody too long, but we do appreciate it, and we look forward to working with everyone.
Yep, thank you.
Mr. Lees, I know you do, and for all of you, when the state, there's 25.3 million reasons why we have to follow their schedule. So we will continue to work with them, but they do set the schedule, and we have to do that. So, but they've done a lot of projects, and they've built a lot of beautiful schools. So we will continue to work with them and produce a building this community is going to be very proud of. So. And then the last thing I have is that we continue to work through the driveway process, and we had another meeting this afternoon. Long story short, everybody wants some improvements done to Route 63 in Yankee, and because we're doing a drive, they're like, well, hey, maybe the school can take care of that. We're not going to take care of that. We are going to take care of our driveway. We will do what improvements need to be done to Yankee on our property, but we will work with them, and I've shared in every meeting, and I will continue to share that the money that we have is going to go towards our building. I am not going to open a high school and say we couldn't afford furniture because we had to add $2 million in improvements to Route 63. So we have our budget for the drive, and we'll work with them, and we'll continue to partner with them. I know you asked about Lemon Township. Although they are the entity, they really don't have, it's the county engineers that, Butler County engineers that work through that process.
Okay.
And they will definitely be at the table as we're working through this process. So, okay. Any questions?
Nope. Get her done. We need to put a bulldozer out here so people think we're doing something.
Well, the good thing is they are going to be starting here pretty shortly on the gym info project, so there'll be fencing that's going up and some work there. So, and then we're going to have Brett pay for the ground groundbreaking ceremony like they do at.
They've got a lot of
WeatherTech.
ribbons and big scissors.
Those pumpkin strudels that they serve at they're amazing. So if you guys could hook us up with those.
Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, it's the WeatherTech. Yeah, they have a groundbreaking about every other week. It seems like. Yeah.
Whether they need it or not.
Well, there's pumpkin strudel involved. All right, let's go.
Everybody's going.
I know, this sounds great. All right, thank you, Mr. Buzzkurt. All right, moving along, Section 4, Treasurer of Business, Item 4.1, Mrs. Moore.
I recommend approval of the resolution authorizing the issuance of bond anticipation notes not to exceed $36,750,000.
May I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. May I get a second?
Second.
It was Mr. Leeds.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. You trying to steal Tom's second?
I was trying, but, it's okay.
Man. All right, any questions, comments?
I have some comments. We have some visitors here today, just in case you do have questions. So this is part of our team. Brenda Weimer, she has been here one time before. She's our bond counsel. And then Mr. Dave Tiggett, he is part of our underwriting team. I'm sorry. And if you, sorry. If you have any questions for them, they are here to assist with that. This is the first phase of the project to go ahead and get some money rolling in, to get us started, get some POs started, get some people paid who have been with us through the beginning phases. But bond anticipation notes are in anticipation of bonds. So we will issue the bonds, I think that's around March-ish, maybe, I think. I don't have the exact time frame, but the bonds will replace the notes once that happens. So this is just the initial phase, and it'll be in 2 pieces.
Excellent.
Questions, comments?
I don't think so.
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
I have a comment, if that's okay. I do have a question, because somebody asked me, can the public buy the bonds?
They can. Go for it.
Members of the board, my name's Dave Tiggett. I'm with Key Bank Capital Markets, and we're serving as the underwriter. So our job is to sell the bonds to the public and to the community. So when we get closer to the time to sell the bonds, what we can do is, if you have constituents that want to support the bond financing, we'll initially come in and educate them on it, on the financing and so forth, and how the bonds are structured. And then we would have them contact their individual investment reps, who would then contact our desk, who would, put in the orders. So to answer your question, short, yes, your constituents will be able to buy the bonds.
Good.
And they'll have priority over institutions who we would sell the bonds to as well.
Okay, good. That's great. Thanks. That's it.
Good.
Okay. Shall I call the roll?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 4.2.
I recommend authorization of the treasurer to enter into an engagement with Bradley Payne Advisors for the public financial advisor services.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Questions or comments?
And we've worked with Bradley Payne through our entire process, even back when we were thinking about ELP, before we got the CFAP. And we will like to actually formally engage with them.
Any other questions?
Nope.
No?
All right. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 4.3.
I recommend approval to adopt a plan under the Ohio Public Employees Deferred Compensation Plan.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Questions or comments?
Explain that, please.
Yes. So Ohio Public Employees Deferred Comp, they have a program for 457 plans, and I think they also do Roths. As a public employer, we are required to offer that to our employees, and we recently found out that we had never created an account here. So we are creating that account so that it can be formally offered to the employees, along with the other investment options that we have.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 4.4,
I recommend approval of the 5-year forecast.
may I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
And I have a presentation to go with this.
All right, let's go.
We'll stand up. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, Mrs. Vice President, and the rest of the board. I don't usually stand up here, but instead of turning, and Cinda will be happy because you can hear me. I was not, that is the formal way to address the board.
Well, let's just pretend you were.
Yeah, we like it better that way.
So the attachments on the agenda, there was actually the full forecast with the assumptions, and it's quite a bit of pages. The summary forecast is all on one page, on page 22 of that. Outside of that, there's a whole lot of assumptions that kind of goes through each line of the forecast. So just so you know, my comments are in red. So if you read anything, just read the red comments. I tried to add to just all the data, and hopefully I put in some of the why of what's going on in a lot of those lines and why you're seeing some of the variances or the trends. So basically, the objective of the forecast and the purpose, we are required by law to prepare the forecast. It is required to be submitted twice a year, once in November, once in May. We actually can update it anytime if we have other significant changes that we want to submit as a formal change. It focuses on general fund only, and it includes 3 years of history, 5 years of projections, and it is a working document and a planning tool. We use our historical trends and what we know today to prepare this forecast, but as you know, just from comments here at the board today, things change and they change quickly sometimes. So it's prepared on what we know today, but what we know tomorrow might be completely different. And we will find out. I mean, Mr. Leeds pointed out some things that are in the works. We had Premier come to us just last week with those changes. So, you know, it's a working document. And as long as we keep monitoring it, you know, we adjust as needed. The next slide. The forecast at a glance. So the main thing when you put together the whole forecast, we're really looking at the surpluses and deficits that occur in any given year within that forecast. That's our focus. Then, you know, if you do have a deficit, you look at, okay, well, do we have cash balance to cover that? We do have cash balance here. But I will point out that in this forecast, we are doing pretty well because 25 to 29 also includes several transfers related to our gym and fill driveway project, and then the support that we expect to need for our bond support for the new bond until 2029. So even with that, we don't hit a deficit until 2029, and that deficit is really about $300,000 to $400,000 because out of that $2 million deficit, 1.7 of that is bond support. So we're in pretty good shape. Now, that doesn't mean go wild or anything. It just means let's be strategic about how we use our funding in the future. And then the only other note I have on this slide is that budget reserves, I have 120 days in there currently. We just met with Neola. They have a policy in the works that probably will be first read at the next meeting to actually set the minimum reserve requirement at 90 days. But I am putting 120 days in here just because I can. So Any questions or comments?
Is that a change? Because we already are at 90 as a policy, aren't we?
Well, there was a policy at 90, and then it switched to 180. And then we rescinded that because that maybe was a little high, especially with our projects coming up.
Okay.
So we didn't want to lock ourselves in at 180, which honestly is very above standard.
Yeah.
90 is pretty standard.
Okay.
So, yeah. Okay, so next is our revenue assumptions. And I feel like I've talked about property taxes at every meeting for like the last 6 months. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but once again, we got the back pay for Rockies. It was about 1.6 million. And just note that we had the historic increase in valuations, which the valuation increase was about 25.08%, and that's including all properties. It was different at the different categories, like Res Ag was different than commercial, but the aggregate was 25.08. Other revenue, interest is still strong. Who knows where that will land, with changes in the economy and or politics. So for now, we are still estimating them strong but conservative, I will say that. State funding. The Fair School Funding Plan had a 6-year phase-in. It began in fiscal year 22, and that's the phase-in schedule there. And this is basically them promising how much they will fund the districts out of the formula. So as you see, it's approaching 100%, which is planned to get to 100% in 2027. 2025 is supposed to be funded at 66.67%. And then as far as we know, that's still in play. Of course, politics can change all that with the next budget, but hopefully, as far as we know, these percentages are going to stay through the end of that Fair School Funding Plan. And then our funding per student, base cost at the state is about $8,100. Right now, we are getting 47.95% of that, so our state share is $3,884 per student. Our state funding represents about 39% of our total general fund revenue. Enrollment is based on recent studies, and we've had, there's the state formula, which includes things like, the birth rates and all of that. They have this big formula they do to determine your enrollment. We had Cropper do a study for us as well because we were like, no way that was right. Well, they came out with pretty much the same data for us. So it was supposed to be flat, and that's what we were basing this on. But then, as things go, this forecast is almost out of date as I'm speaking because we just got our November foundation numbers, and it says that we gained some students. So for now, I upped it just a little bit to know if that's a false gain. Some of those might go back. We may have some transient students. I have a slide on that, though, in a minute here, so we'll go on to the next one. So basically on the revenue side, just something to point out that as the district gains more wealth, and they look at our property valuations and our median income as two main factors for determining our wealth, the state funding does start to decline, and we will see that starting in 2029, and it will continue to decline, assuming that everything is good here, beyond that. So just keep that in mind. It's something to watch out for because it actually drops in 2029. And so our days of the extra millions to catch us up are limited. So, and the next slide is on the enrollment. So this is a very flat enrollment, but I did bump us up by 9 kids for 2025. And these are based on FTEs, which is different than like when Robert talks about our total enrollment, because that's like per kid, per body. And this is based on FTEs, so some of those kids are partials. And we have about 26. We ended the year last year with about 2675. This year, like I said, we had an uptick, and we think it may be around 26 students that might actually stay. And the intel, it's hard to get intel, but we think some of that is move-ins, but also Lakota stopped some of their open enrollment, so we got some kids back from that, and those kids will probably stay. So as of right now, I bumped us up a little bit, but I wasn't willing to make any long-term decisions yet until I see if this was just a blip. And so January, February, we'll know if those numbers are sticking around or not.
These are kids in our buildings, or these also include Butler Tech and?
That is only, they call it butts and seats. It's
Yeah.
actual kids that are in the seats, and I'll give my one daughter, for example, that she's here all day, but she is in a CCP class, so that funding goes to Cincinnati State for that one period. So she's not technically a full-time Monroe student, so all of that is factored in. So that's why that number is smaller than when you look at the total enrollment of about 2,900 kids. So.
Right. And we've seen a little bit of an uptick of the amount of kids that are going to Butler Tech, I think, as I recall.
It's been pretty steady for the past. We were unsure when they went. How long ago did they switched to the lottery system? 3 years ago. So we were unsure, but it's been pretty steady over the last 3 years about what we get. So.
Yep.
You'd think having the president of the board would help that situation, but doesn't.
Expenditure assumptions, our MEA contract expires June 30 of this year, so we are already beginning that process. Currently, this forecast includes a 2.5% COLA, cost of living, and the staffing levels are as they are with no projected FTEs, because we will consider those during the budget process as they come up. But we're not putting in any assumptions or promises that any new staff will be added through the next 5 years of the forecast. General fund this year absorbed the final ESSER-funded positions, and I'll have a slide on that in a minute. Health rate increases, they start January 1 of 2025, and our PPO, which was our most popular plan, was at 11.9%. Oh, and the health high deductible plan was also that rate. We just don't have a lot of takers on that one. And the 8.9% is the true cost plan, which has a very small percentage of our staff taking that at this time. Our open enrollment just closed last week, I think on Friday. And so we'll have, I may have some adjustments there, but I should be in the ballpark. Other than that, purchase services, we have some pretty big purchase service contracts, and I just wanted to highlight the top contracts in that area. Our maintenance custodial is through Sodexo, transportation through Peterman, student services. We have a lot of services provided by Butler and Warren County ESCs, and then our IT support is through Forward Edge, which you, of course, know that because you approve all the contracts. But
do we anticipate the bill that sounds like it's likely to go through that's going to put the minimum to 50,000 on employment?
Again, that's something that they keep talking about, that kind of stuff. This is the first time I've heard the 50,000 number. So yeah, that will definitely impact ours because we're at 40, I can't remember, is it 47 or 40? 49. So actually, after negotiations, we might be in above that anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. So
That's not a bad thing. I mean, considering I'd rather know that we're going to get hit with it rather than getting hit after the fact.
yeah. Okay, and the next group of assumptions, so this is where we talk about the transfers and for the projects. So our gym infill project right now is, the estimate's at 2.9 million, and those transfers are split between 25 and 26. Our driveway project right now is 1.5 million, but of course that is a very loose estimate. We don't have a lot of information at this time, but it's best guess right now. And that's split between 26 and 27. And then our bond support, right now we have at a steady 1.7 million a year from 26 to 29. And again, that estimate may change once we issue the bonds. It's dependent on interest rate and a whole lot of other factors. So, but that's our best estimate at this time. And then other comments, we had textbook adoption years, 23, and then we have some in 25. And future, you won't see another blip in the future. It's just averaged out among the years until we have a more solid timeline on that. and then I'll adjust it. The general fund currently pays for the House Bill 264 energy conservation loan. It's about $55,000 a year, and that'll be paid off in December of 2030. So then this is just a slide on the salaries, and you can kind of see how it has changed over the years. And our 2025 figure, those are the positions that are fully coming back into general fund that were funded by ESSER last year. 3 intervention specialists, a counselor, 2 instructional coaches, and 4 building subs. You can also see those changes represented by percentages, and so you can totally see how it kind of levels off in 26, and that's because that's a basic cost of living and step increases. No new positions assumed at this time, but those big spikes are new positions. And then just an overview. It's our revenue and expenditures. The projected gain for this year is about $2.7 million. We hope to end with about $43.7 million, and that's with a $2 million transfer for the gem infill project. And this is the split of our revenues. The state funding represents about 39% at this time, which last year it was 41%, but the piece that grew was the all other revenue, and that's probably a little bit of interest and the TIF revenues that went up a bit. And then our expenditures, that's the breakdown. Now this one, I feel like the percentages are a little skewed because we have that advance in there, or I'm sorry, the transfer in there of $2 million. So if you take out the transfer, our personnel costs are actually 72% of the pie, which is, we were at 73% for fiscal '24 actual. So it's right on point. It's just the transfer gets calculated in. And then this next one, it's a great big overview. There's a lot going on in this slide. Our revenue versus our expenditures. As you can see, the revenues outpace the expenditures until we get to 29. Gets really close in 28. And our cash balance, it will go down by 2029, the end of this forecast. But again, we've strategically decided to make all of those transfers to support those projects. So it's a good use of fund balance. And then just a fun little chart. I have to do a little bit of asking more questions on this one because those transfers, there is a note on here that advances are taken out so that they don't impact your per pupil spend, but transfers still count. And I guess technically all the things that we're doing are for the pupils, so but it bumps up that per pupil spend, and I don't know that I have any control over that, but I'm going to find out about that because it's those 25 to 29 is a bit inflated because of the transfers. So, and it costs about $79 a day to educate our kids. And the residents are paying approximately 22% of the tax bills. Actually, this is based on valuations, but they represent 22% of the total. Last year, that was 24%, so that just tells me that our commercial went up. So, and that's all I have. Questions?
Oh, very good info.
No. Awesome.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you very much.
That was a very well done presentation.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the charts. They're easy to read and very self-explanatory and just good. It was good.
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Shall I call the roll?
Does anybody have any other questions? No? Now you can call the roll.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Grant,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Section 5, treasurer consent agenda. Mrs. Moore.
I ask for approval of the treasurer consent agenda as presented.
May I get a motion?
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Second by Mr. Fulham.
Thank you.
All right, Mrs. Moore?
I would prefer not to go through the monthly report since I just did my financial five-year forecast, but the monthly report right now, everything is perfect. If you see my monthly report, it's all zeros. It matches perfectly. The only time of the year that will ever happen. But outside of that, we've got the minutes from the last meeting, the bond fund report. There is one then and now that just went over the $3,000 limit that I can authorize on my own. And we have some donations for acceptance. And then a new activity group that actually has already existed, but this will be the first time that they might have financial transactions. So we're creating a code for them as well as authorizing the group.
All right. Any questions?
Robert, do you think we could maybe, like, a group like that come in and, I know we've had like a couple of them come in and kind of explain what they do, but I think that that would be something interesting for me. I mean, I'm really involved in certain areas of the school personally, but not others, and if that's something that they could come in and maybe explain, something if
Some of the
they
different
have
clubs and
interest in
groups.
doing it.
Yeah.
Because I know I know that we have a lot of groups like that that don't really get their shine at these well-attended board meetings, but I think it's really informative for us and leads me to learn more about what's going on. So. And thank you for the donations. That's my other comment.
Is all the money where it's supposed to be?
Yes, it is.
So I was going to ask that question. All
I get all
right.
teary-eyed over there.
Without any other questions, Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Mrs. Moore. All right, Section 6, Superintendent Personnel Consent Agenda. Mr. Buskirk.
I recommend the approval of the superintendent personnel consent agenda as presented.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. Mr. Buskirk.
It's pretty self-explanatory. We've got a few resignations, some substitutes. If you see, we have quite a few Miami student teachers this year, which is, I think is a positive. And those are the stipends from Miami for the teachers hosting. And I think that was it.
All right, any questions?
No.
All right, Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Grant,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Section 7, Superintendent Other Business.
It's recommended the board approve the early grads for the following students that are listed for you.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you,
Give it to Debbie.
Mrs. Hagedorn. Any questions?
Teamwork.
As always, we invite them back for the
Yes.
ceremony, the commencement ceremony.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Yeah, way to go, guys. All right, Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Item 7.2.
It's recommended the approval of the completion of RFQ and RFP process selecting Collier Construction Group as the CM at risk for the gym infill project and the resolution to authorize entering into the contract for pre-construction services.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any comments or questions? Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Leeds,
Aye.
Mr. Fulham,
Aye.
Mr. Grant,
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn,
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Item 7.3.
It's recommended the approval of the main campus water softener replacement.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Fulham. Any questions?
What's the time frame on that? How long do we expect it to last? It's
I
just-
think it was 6 to 8 weeks to get the material.
No, I mean, once we get it installed, how long is it supposed to last?
Oh,
You know?
So this one just under 20 years.
Okay.
But, you know,
We'll talk to you in 18 on that one.
Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried.
All right.
Yeah. It's getting late. Sorry, guys. All right, item 7.4.
It's recommended to approve the termination of the Premier Health Agreement on November 30th of 2024 and approve the new sports medicine agreement with Kettering Health effective December 1st through June 30th.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
And remind me, do we get funds back
Yep,
from
we get a refund.
whatever the
I forget
prorated?
what the amount was. I can, if I don't remember, did I share the amount in the weekly bulletin? But I
I
can
can't
do
remember
that, so.
the amount.
Yeah. It's prorated, so yes, they're going to be refunding us, so.
Any other questions?
No, good riddance. Has me fired up. Don't even get me started on this thing.
We won't
Dave,
ask
do you
you
have any
more
comments on it?
Nope.
Sure, now's the time.
Yeah, we've got time.
I will keep my mouth
I would
closed.
be, I'm right there with you,
Premier.
Mr. Grant.
All right. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
A less aggressive aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 7.5.
No, this one has me.
It is recommended the approval, the attached to the 3-year agreement with Life Touch from July 25 to June of 28.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Are there other options out there?
Not really.
Do they have kind of like a monopoly, or is it just, there's nobody that even buys for the business?
There are some,
Yeah, there's a fly.
It's-
bar.
he's going to-
Started with
some
Dave.
other out there, but from experience, I made the mistake of switching once and it,
Grass isn't greener.
no.
It's usually greener because there's more.
They actually met with them last spring and we expressed a lot of our concerns and they have been very positive in
Yeah,
that
I know
thus far.
one student in particular, they misspelled his name like 7 times over the 4 years that he's been here. It's almost like a running joke on Facebook with his parent. It's actually comical, but like, I mean, that's just where the
Right.
tip of the iceberg starts, but,
Yeah.
all right. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All
Great
right.
opportunity for business out there, anybody that wants to steal a share of the market.
Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Item 7.6.
It's recommended the board approve a European student trip with EF Tours for the summer of 2026. And again, they go every other year. They went last summer, and not this coming summer, but following summer.
May I get a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds. I know Lucy's very excited about this one, so
Are you chaperoning?
Is,
I don't know.
is it a
Maybe.
certain
got to.
student organization that goes, or how?
It's open to any of the
It's
high
open to
school
any,
students,
any,
yeah.
really?
Yep, they do fundraising and
Yep.
things like that to pay.
That's why they go every other year, because they spend some time getting fundraising.
I wish I would have did that. We didn't have this opportunity in high school, but take it if you can.
I
That's
did it,
awesome.
and it was pretty cool.
I think it's amazing. I was like,
And if
wow.
Switzerland is on the list, I recommend Geneva. It was great.
That was one of the potentials. That'd be pretty cool.
It was awesome.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant?
Aye.
Mr. Leeds?
Aye.
Mr. Fulham?
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn?
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter?
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, Mr. Buzzkirk. All right, let's move along. Section 8, comments from the board. Mr. Leeds.
First of all, I want to thank everybody for voting for the levy. That was great. 63%. That's very good, very good. Congratulations to the student athletes that were here that we recognize, and for all the rest of them that played in fall sports and everything. Good job. And glad to see we're moving along on our driveway. Anyway, but in the building project, that's a long time coming. And we look forward to working with all you guys that get this project going. So other than that, that's all I've got.
Mr. Lee. Mr. Fulham.
I'm going to open up with something. So we went to, Mr. Leeds and I went to OSBA Capital Conference, and Robert was there as well. I've got a ton of notes that I've got to digest with them, but I figured I'd let them get through the holidays before I bombarded them. But the one major takeaway, and I really was observing for this, and I shared it with Robert and Tom when we were there, our problems are very small considerably when you start to compare them to other districts. Just being a fly on the wall in a room full of 200 people that are board members, treasurers, superintendents, et cetera, hearing the things that they're talking about outwardly, and then also listening to the chatter amongst themselves. It was extremely refreshing and a nice reminder that sometimes, you know, we get a little caught up in our own situation, and while a drive is quite the fiasco here, I mean, that's what we're talking about. There are very significant problems happening all throughout the state of Ohio, and that is a testament. We always give it back to the teachers and the leadership here. That truly is a testament to the folks that we have here. Low turnover at the leadership level, considerably passionate educators. I could go on for an hour about this. So just a stark reminder that we've got some really great things here in Hornet Country to focus on, and I want to always maintain that focus on those areas, even when there are some tough things that we have to deal with from time to time. And
so you should go be a delegate into that portion of it sometime.
No, you don't want to do that.
If you really want to hear some crazy. I sat with Mr. Guido a few years ago, and I was like, oh my goodness, I did not know that's what happened in here. It was wild. But
we've got it very easy. So let's keep it that way.
There's some characters out there.
Continue the great work that's going on. And now, into my official high fives from around the Hive. High fives to the cast and crew of And Then There Were None. Did I get that right, Cinda? Okay. Which was presented by our Monroe Thespian Troupe 1709 earlier this month. It's always a thrill to catch a performance by our talented students, and this year's Black Box Theater was no exception. The hours poured into the production are always evident by the amazing performances. High five to both Coach Tim Kellis and Monroe graduate Faith Hensley, class of 2018, who were inducted into the Butler County Softball Hall of Fame. Coach Kellis continues to pour himself into our student athletes and softball program, while Faith recently concluded an amazing collegiate career that started at Ball State, where she was named the 2022 MAC Player of the Year, and continued all the way to Tuscaloosa for the Alabama Crimson Tide for her final year of eligibility. High fives to the Levy Committee, who provided the community with a wealth of information that ultimately led to the passing of the bond issue to build a new high school. When I ran for school board, this was the major topic of discussion, providing our district with the facilities to grow and provide the best opportunities for our students. I'm thankful that with the support of our amazing community, we will be able to continue toward that collective goal. It's been a busy few months for all of our students and staff, so I'm thankful for this time to take a brief pause. It's a great opportunity to reflect on so many wonderful people that we have within our district and be thankful for all that we share. The future is bright for all of us in Monroe, so I implore you to take a moment to say something kind, be a friend, and put forth your best effort to play a positive role. With that said, I am done.
All right, thank you, Mr. Fulham.
Yep.
Mr. Grant.
First, I'd like to thank the community for the yes vote on our levy. It was fantastic. As few of us have said, it's been long overdue. I remember that meeting down at the board office back in, I think it was 2017, when it went awry. So this is a good step, and I'm really excited for the next process, or the process getting us to the next step and working with everyone here. So, and also just want to wish everyone in the community and our staff and Robert and Amy a happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and enjoy the few days off. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Grant. Mrs. Hagedorn?
So I kind of want to, not reiterate, but again, thank the community for passing the bond issue. That was excellent news to receive. It was fun to be, I happened to be traveling during the election, so I didn't have the opportunity to watch the TV screen and see the percent of yes, percent of no, how close was it? I had no idea. So when I got a message that it passed, I was just like, just that anticipation was like, yes, it was very exciting, and it just made it for a very good evening. So thank you to the community for that support, and it's just going to make our community better, and it's going to be good for the students, because that's what we're here for, is the education, and for our students. We want to give them the education that they deserve and that they deserve and they should have, so that they can, you know, be very successful in their futures wherever they should go. So I just thank you very much for that. And then, and just everybody have a great Thanksgiving and enjoy the holidays that coming up here this weekend. That's all.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Well, I don't have much else to add to that, so I'm not going to. So I'll just say exactly what I agree.
I agree.
All right. So moving along to Section 9, adjourn to executive session. It is recommended the board adjourn to executive session to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment, Ohio Revised Code 121.22G4. No action will be taken. May I get a motion to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Grant.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Hagedorn. Mrs. Moore, please call the roll.
Mr. Grant.
Aye.
Mrs. Hagedorn.
Aye.
Mr. Fulham.
Aye.
Mr. Leeds.
Aye.
Mr. Carpenter.
Aye, motion carried. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, you gotta get,
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Looking forward to working with you guys. More.
Excited.
You do the same.
Yep. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
She what?